So I want to welcome everybody to the second in our fall speaker series in honor of the CIS Sandbox 10th year on Bentley's campus. I'm Mark Feidenberg, the director of the CIS Sandbox. And I want to welcome Stefan Demers, who graduated from Bentley in 2007. Is that right? 2009?
2009.
2009. You were in my class in 2007, I think.
Yeah.
It was 2006. And Stefan now works at Facebook doing virtual reality and supply chain stuff. And I'm really thrilled that we've had the chance to reconnect. So, Stefan, take it away. Welcome back to Bentley.
Awesome. I was so excited when I got invited, and I'm excited to chat with you. I saw a few of you have reached out ahead of time on LinkedIn, and so if this stuff is interesting to you, then I'd love to hear from you. So what are we going to talk about? I'm going to talk a little bit about me. We won't talk that much about me. I have a couple kind of quick ground rules I've got to set. Mostly today, I'm going to walk you through the new product that I was part of bringing to market that is officially out in the world for sale on October 13th. But I think for any of you that are interested in the hardware side of the business, hopefully it'll be an interesting insight into how that works. I want to talk a little bit about the stuff that's coming next. And then I want to leave as much as time as possible for Q&A. But if there's something that you hear that you have a burning question about, I'm happy to answer questions in line. So kind of little background about me. So I went to Bentley for undergrad, and I was a CIS major. And just as like, if any of you aren't CIS majors, maybe my little anecdote is I entered Bentley as a management major. After my sophomore year, I was finding that the only internships I could get were at Enterprise Rental Car. And that seemed really grim to me. And so I dropped out of the management program, switched over to CIS. And by the summer of my sophomore year, I was working for Boston Scientific in an internship. And it was honestly of one of those few decisions in my life where it's been really clear that it was a good decision. Like that was a really good decision. So I worked for Boston Scientific, and I hung around Boston for about 4 years after I graduated school. And then I really wanted to be on the West Coast. So I moved out to Portland, Oregon, and I spent 4 years working for the Bonneville Power Administration, which is, it's part of the Department of Energy. And I got to do some cool development and learn about being a product owner. And I actually coded a fair amount of the software that manages the power grid on the West Coast. After that wrapped up, I really had decided that I loved the operations side of things. And I spent 4 years over at Nike. And over at Nike, I really went in deeper on supply chain. So really understanding what it takes to surprise and delight a consumer in the age where Amazon Prime has made the norm 2-day delivery. So understanding from a systems perspective, from an operations perspective, what makes people really excited about engaging with a brand. And after that, I got a call from a former manager who I had a great relationship with. And she invited me to come interview at Facebook Reality Labs, who are the makers of the Portal and the Oculus. And so I've been over at Facebook for about 18 months now, and it is so far and away the best job I've ever had. And we can talk about more about why, but it's a really fun place to work. And somewhere in the Nike Facebook transition, I decided to go get my master's degree. So I just finished in March getting my master's degree in global supply chain management. Okay, so 2 ground rules for today. I am here representing me. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff going on at Facebook. but none of this is the Facebook party line. None of this is representing Facebook. And so keep that in mind. And the second thing is, I really want this to be an open and honest dialogue, and I want to be able to give you guys meaningful answers. So I will tell you now that I'm happy to answer any question that you have, as long as it doesn't put my NDA at risk. Hopefully that seems fair. Okay, so rather than talk to you about everything that I do, I thought I would ground this in something that I've been working on for the last couple of months, and that I've been a piece of. And so hopefully it'll be more meaningful that way. So I've heard that you guys, I think you have some Rift S's in the sandbox that you can access in normal times. Show of hands, nod of heads. Are folks familiar with Oculus? Okay, I see some maybes, I see some yeses. Cool. So fundamentally in 2016, Facebook bought Oculus because Mark Zuckerberg believes that that it is the next platform for computing. 30 years ago, we started the PC revolution. 12 years ago, we started the smartphone revolution. And he believes that in 5, 10, 15 years, that it's not going to be about phones. It's not going to be about PCs. That the basis of the way that we're going to interact with technology in the future is going to be through VR and augmented reality. So if you had that belief and you really wanted to make a big bet, and you looked around the landscape in 2016, and products were $700, $800 to get into the game, and then you really needed a $2,500 gaming PC to really make it run, that's not going to bring the future. It's going to bring the early adopters, but it's not going to be the basis of widespread embrace and adoption. And so really the gambit that got thrown down at the beginning of this product life cycle was, can we sell something that's $300? And so all of a sudden at $300, you're in the same area as a last gen console or a Chromebook or a Nintendo Switch. You're in a realm where it's still kind of a lot of money, but it's definitely Christmas present money, or treat myself when I get my paycheck money. And I think the other piece that's really important is we got rid of the PC piece, so that this is really standalone. This is running fundamentally it's a really high-end Qualcomm phone chipset that's made around XR, but it means that you don't have to plug it anymore. And so I think that's a really important distinction. I think the other important distinction is, from the outset, there was an idea that this wasn't going to be just a thing for gamers. That this was really going to be something that was based around the idea of social interaction. That it was going to be a place where you could do business, and it would still be great for games, but that was no longer the only use case and the only mindset. And then I think finally, bringing all this together, you got an appealing product. You don't need a PC. You're making it cheap. The reason that you do that is so that you can sell millions of them. And the Facebook targeted number that's out in the press is that we want to sell 2 million of these things between now and Christmas. And without saying too much more than that, I would say that is something that we're going to be able to accomplish. So that's kind of the background of what we're going to be talking about. So with kind of that gambit and with that vision in mind, what I really want to do is I want to talk about how you bring a new hardware product to life. And I'm going to be talking about Oculus, but having worked with people that make high-end sneakers and that make iPhones and that make smart devices, and really kind of built a network and friendships with those folks, I can say across the board that what I'm going to show you as far as the life cycle of the Quest or Quest 2 is going to apply to any of your favorite pieces of hardware, and probably some of the ones that you don't like either. So I think really the most important piece is, when you're going for innovation, is what is the best technology available, and sometimes that's going to mean needing to invent new tech. And so for the Quest 2, what it really came down to is, what is the chipset that's going to be widely available, that's going to be powerful enough to run games without a connection to a PC, and what are the screens that are powerful enough, and effective enough and fast enough, so that all the things that people didn't like about VR 3 years ago aren't a problem anymore. And for some of you that maybe are early adopters and you've spent time using VR, I think people talk about nausea and they talk about the screen door effect. And so really it was, what technology is gonna get rid of those two limitations, and make this work. I think the next question is, how are people going to use it? So you have this cool technology, you're starting to bring it together. You need to start thinking about the use cases. And so for Quest 2, it's really, we want to get the gamers because, I think with the next generation of consoles coming out right now, with people absolutely loving their Switches, and with a lot of people buying the first gen Quest, we know gamers spend money. We know they love the product, but we wanted to move beyond that. So to move beyond gamers, it's really, how can we have great social interaction in VR? And then lastly, the other really big piece that we started with Quest and is going to be more important with Quest 2 is people actually using VR for work. So having design teams that can work together and wind tunnel in real time together and look how a model is affected in a wind tunnel, so Johnson & Johnson is using the first generation Quest to teach doctors how to implant stents and like hip devices. So it's really, it's moving beyond just, this is a thing for gamers, to, we want something powerful enough and easy enough that non-gamers, non-tech people can really embrace this as part of their world. Then comes kind of the less cool parts, but really, if you're building something you want to sell at a mass scale, you got to figure out how much it's going to cost. And so every piece and part, every plug, every plastic, you have to go out and figure out what is the lowest price that I can make this thing, while balancing out your other two pieces here of keeping the best tech and making sure that the people that actually buy it are happy. And then the other piece that comes with that cost is, who can make this? And so if you ever get a chance, I think some of you would be thrilled by it. Some of you might be bored by it. But go get yourself into a technology factory. And so the picture I have of the factory here is a factory in Weifang, Vietnam, with a manufacturer called Gore-Tex. But for the most part, the electronics that we all buy and use are made in China, and they're made by a relatively small number of very, very, very capable, very high tech, very large firms: Foxconn, Gore-Tex, Pegatron, Longshear, who know how to build really complicated stuff, and know how to do it cheaply and effectively. There's a little bit of it in Vietnam now. There's a little bit in Taiwan. There's a little bit in Malaysia. But for the most part, if you're going to go build something complex and at a large scale, you're going to be talking to a few different companies in China. And then the last piece that's really important that you've got to think about from the beginning is, where are we going to sell it? So with the Quest 2, part of the play was, we really wanted to enter the Japanese market in a big way. There's a really small footprint that we had in Japan, but we wanted to move beyond North America and Europe. and actually be able to sell it in Japan. So I'm gonna take a 2-second pause there. Any thoughts, questions, urgent things on your mind? Okay. Cool. So thinking about where we are, we've decided what we want to build. We've thought about who we're going to build it with, and we know who we're building it for. Now, as far as I'm concerned, comes the really fun part, which is actually going and setting up the manufacturing. And so in normal times, I spend 3 or 4 months a year in China, Vietnam, Japan, hanging out at manufacturing facilities with a bunch of engineers that all have their Stanford PhDs, and I just try to soak it all in. But when you set up a new manufacturing facility, really the first thing that you're doing is you're trying to vet that you can actually build this thing that you have in your mind, and that maybe you've built 5 of in a lab somewhere. And so you're setting up a prototype line. And what the prototype line is doing is it's figuring out how the pieces fit together. When I run this thing through a specific machine, does it bend it? Does it discolor it? And you're trying to figure out what your manufacturing process is actually going to look like. And that is one of the hardest parts of creating a new product, because it's not that you need to create 5 or 10 of something. It's that you really need to be able to create millions of them. And you need to be able to create millions of them in a matter of months. So you've got to figure out your proto piece. The second piece that comes as you're figuring out how to build your prototype line is your quality and your reliability. So in every one of these factories, and every company has these, you have an area called rel testing. And I wish I could have taken a picture for you, but I couldn't. But imagine a giant room where phones and Oculuses and iPads are just being abused in every way possible. So you have basically an oven that sees how hot a device can get before it lights on fire. You have humidity chambers where you're trying to see how much salt or how much humidity can be in the air before a unit fails or lights on fire. You have drop tests where you have basically a jig with a device on it, and you're dropping it from 6 feet, maybe 200 or 300 times inside of a box and outside of a box. And really your point with this is, how do I build a device that when somebody knocks it off their car or takes it to the beach or leaves it by the pool or takes it with them into a sauna, which, you think, right, you're building something for millions of people. You have to really be ready for them to do every crazy thing that a human being is going to do. And so what that tells you is, if the stuff coming off of your prototype line is actually going to be ready to use in the world. The second piece that comes with this is more the quality side. So it's more straightforward questions like, if I play games on it for 3 hours, does it fritz out? If I'm worried about backward compatibility, can I play games from the previous generation on this thing without trouble? And for quality, a big part of that is a process internal to Facebook that we call dog fooding. So way back at the beginning of the year, we sent out about 5,000 of these things to Facebook employees and said, go crazy. Here's some test cases we want you to run. Go and try to do everything that you can to establish what works and what doesn't work on this. And again, I don't know. I haven't worked for Apple. I can say that Nike follows a really similar process where when they introduce a new shoe or a new garment or a new fabric, that really, to establish quality, you want to get as many of them out there to an internal audience as you can. to figure out exactly what's going to break on them and what works well and what doesn't. So we've got our prototype working. We figured out the quality issues. We figured out the reliability issues. We've probably made some changes to that prototype line. And then the really big part that comes next is scale. So how do I go from building a couple hundred of these a day to building, 40,000 a day or 100,000 a day? And that is really about doing a very careful replication of every step that you did on your proto line, and bringing it up so that you might have 10 or 15,000 people at a time working on these same processes. So it's about really good controls, really good engineering, really good training, and then a really good feedback mechanism so that if people find problems, that information can be spread across all of your lines, and you can course correct. So we figured out what we wanted to build. We built it. Here's kind of where my world is most focused. So I think the first piece that's really worth talking about is trade in dangerous goods. So if I want to sell something in Europe, they have different requirements than they might in North America. The plug has to be different. It's got to go under different testing. There are different standards for anything that's going to touch human skin. So figuring out how to make a product that's actually going to be compliant is really important. I think the other one that most of you may never have thought about, but it is very, very real, is that from a shipping and logistics perspective, a lot of the products that you have in your house are really dangerous. Like, you have an iPhone, and inside of that iPhone is a lithium ion battery that if it gets dropped the right way or scratched the right way or overheated, it effectively becomes a bomb. I think dangerous goods gone wrong. I think a recent example that you guys might remember is, I think 2017, there was a Galaxy Note, I think it was the Galaxy Note 8 product, where they messed up their reliability testing, and they put like 10 million phones on the market that you weren't allowed to bring on an airplane because they were afraid that they were going to go into thermal runaway and take the plane down. So a big part of my world is making sure that the testing, the boxes, the labeling, and the planning that goes into making sure that a product is safe and can be transported safely, and if it goes wrong, that we can get it out of the market safely, is I don't know. I would say that that's the part of the job that keeps me up at night, but it's one of the most interesting pieces. The next really big piece of my world is logistics. So logistics is fundamentally, how do I get stuff from where it's made to the place where it's going to be sold? So I think maybe a good example of this is when we entered the Japanese market, and we had never sold in Japan before, and we had to figure out whether we were going to build facilities in Japan or whether we were going to ship from China to Japan. And so there's the kind of the point A to point B question of, can I get enough airplanes? Can it go on a boat? But then there's also kind of the political questions of, like Japanese trade authorities don't really love shipments from China, and might have a lot of scrutiny on certain shipments. And if you have stuff stuck in customs or stuck at a port, then you're not going to be able to really give people what they want when they want it. So solving for the logistics piece is big and it's complex. And again, I certainly am not trying to influence what you do in your career, but if it's an area that's interesting to you, I would say that with the rise of Amazon and e-commerce in general, and the way that COVID has changed that. I can say that logistics is probably one of the fastest growing and most well compensated places that you could focus your career. And then the last piece is fulfillment, and fulfillment is actually kind of the last mile. So it's going from a warehouse to the hands of the consumer that's actually going to use it, or to the Best Buy store or the Target store that's going to sell it. And fulfillment is a place that, again, it seems really straightforward. But I think that as consumers have gotten smarter and as dollars have gotten tighter, it's a place where people have really high expectations, and you want to be able to really like surprise and delight people. And so like, I would say that Facebook, being relatively new to the hardware business, the stuff I've done is pretty straightforward. But at Nike, I would say this is a place where I got to work on some really cool forward-thinking stuff, like using machine learning to actually pre-stock things in people's lockers in their apartment building. So when they ordered it, it was actually already physically in their apartment complex. So I would say Facebook has a long way to go till they're that good. Right now, it's mostly about getting boxes to customers. But fulfillment is another place where I think machine learning, drone technology, and ever increasing expectations is going to bring some really cool stuff. Okay, and then the last piece that is, I think, less of my world, but it's worth keeping in mind, is that at some point, this stuff is actually going to be in a consumer's hands, and you've got to be able to support them. So it's using a really heavy deployment of chatbots, so that you don't need 100 people sitting in a call center. That you can actually use chatbots that understand basic human language and can answer questions like, when am I going to get my order, or can I print or a return sticker? It's reverse logistics, so it's actually like, if somebody isn't happy with their purchase, or if the purchase is damaged, it's making sure that you can get that stuff back out of the market and send them a new one. And then lastly, and this is really important and it's near and dear to my heart, it's setting up really good refurbishment supply chains, so that for things that are worn out or damaged, that you can take that out into the marketplace, that you can do some processes to fix it, and then you can actually go and get it out to be resold again and have another life. Okay, so I'm gonna take a second here as well before we go talk about something else. So hopefully, what I wanted you guys to take away from that is that anytime you bring any new product to the market, it's not just, I have a cool idea. That it's a sequencing of careful steps to get thousands or tens of thousands of people to really think together and approach something together, and make it so that you can make the product, you can sell the product, people can get the product, and once they actually have it, they feel supported and they feel like it's something that they would want to buy again. And I apologize, my dog is somewhat upset. Okay, I'm going to take silence as understanding, and I'm gonna pivot a little bit and talk about something else. So we've talked about Quest, and Quest is cool, and Quest is really like a good example of I think right now best in class VR, but I don't think that VR is the be all end all, and I don't think that it's really where Facebook or really anybody else sees this story ending. So I think I think Apple's been pretty coy about what they want to do. I think Amazon's been pretty coy about what they want to do. Um, and so again, this is me knowing a little bit, and giving my thought on where I see this industry going. So I think that the first piece is the next generation of AR and VR is something that you can wear all day. It is not a big headset that you've got to wear in your living room and it runs out of batteries in 3 hours. It is something with, I think, the form factor probably of glasses, definitely with a strong audio component that you can put on in the morning when you leave your house, or you can even wear when you wake up to get oriented for your day. Um, uh, and it's just sort of like part of your day the way that your phone is, but more so. I think the next really cool piece is it's really good in lens displays. And like in lens displays right now, if any of you guys have ever used them, absolutely suck. If you put an OLED monitor inside of a glasses, or you mount it to glasses, it's not good. And I think some of you may be old enough to remember Google Glass, which was kind of the first play in this space. And it was a pair of glasses that had a little monitor like strapped onto the outside, and it just like it was never a hit in the consumer market. It found a home later on in medical and industrial settings, but it was kind of a big failure, and I think kind of one of Google's first big failures. But the stuff that's coming soon is this technology called a waveguide. And what a waveguide is it's actually a printed circuit board on carbon, so that it's transparent when it's off, but you can see it when it's on. And so it means that you will have glasses that just look like glasses, but will be able to project and overlay information that is readable in a way that a phone screen is. And so what does this let you do? And I think this is the part that's really cool to me. Is it lets you be more context sensitive. And what I mean by that is, if you're talking to someone in a crowded bar, and your glasses know that they're your friend, it might amplify what that person is saying to you, so that you don't have to scream at each other. If you are at a restaurant, it might overlay in real time based on the menu, whether the things on that menu are part of the keto diet that you're following. If you are in a meeting, and folks have shown up, it may have the context sensitivity to actually share a presentation altogether, or share the content that it knew was scheduled associated with this, so that there isn't a need to project. And so it means that you can work a lot more autonomously, or with less need to co-locate. And so, I mean, I think really the dream for me is like get away from people doing this all day, right? And that's, you think about how many times, if you're out with friends, if you're with your family, as soon as somebody actually goes and they dip into their phone, that conversation is kind of ruined. That moment is kind of ruined. That date can certainly feel awkward. And so I think that there may be a really nice sweet spot that comes with this technology, where all of the things that we love from our phone and they're great about our phone stay, and we still have the access to information. We still have the beautiful form factor. We still have the human connection that comes with that, but in a way that makes it less disruptive, and that doesn't feel like it's this like this thing that is always with us, and that as soon as we go into it, we've lost out of the real world. And so I think this idea of combining the real world with with all the information that's so powerful and that makes our lives better, I think is really the vision. And I think what you guys are going to see, and I can't talk about timeline, is at some point next year, the first iteration of this is going to be coming out via a partnership with Luxottica. So if you have any Ray-Bans or Oakleys, you know, I think they make Gucci glasses as well. Then you're familiar with Luxottica products. But so Facebook publicly announced recently a partnership with Luxottica. And the first generation of this isn't really going to be so much about visual. It's going to be more about audio overlay. But this is not 15 years from now science fiction. I think this is a space where we start seeing the practical application and the consumer application soon. And I'm like, this is what I'm pretty excited about, and this is definitely why one of the reasons that I've been having so much fun hanging out at Facebook. Okay. I think that is all I had for content. Hopefully that was helpful, but let me double check calendar here. I have some time for Q&A.
Okay, so if you have a question for Stefan, please, or a comment, or something that you learned that you didn't know, that's all those are welcome. You can either raise your hand and we'll try and call on you, or type something in the chat and I'll call on you. I will put the calendar, the gallery view so I can see everybody. Otherwise, we'll call on you guys. Okay, Stefan, pick somebody.
All right. See, I see Janet L. I'm excited to see you. It's been a while, but I'm not calling on you. I just wanted to say hello.
No, I want to say hi right back. It's great to see you, and thanks for coming. It sounds like it's been a very interesting career for you. So,
yeah,
I love this. What's coming, because I'm a big fan of I agree with you. When people look down at their phone, there's a connection lost. So we can now do it, but nobody will know we're doing it. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, that's well. I think it's more than that. I think it's that it will become like seamless. Like it's just going to be part of it. All right, Sam, you made some interesting faces and head gestures through the course of it. So I think by virtue of having your camera on, do you have any thoughts or questions?
Yes. I was wondering if you could explain more about the refurbish process, and then just the job at Nike in general and how you got your foot in the door.
Yeah, totally. So refurbishment, I think the really important part with refurb is getting rid of the parts on a phone or a device that get gross. You know, on an Oculus product, there's a piece called the facial interface that is actually what touches your face. And you don't want to have that go to the next person who buys it. So, you know, you think about your phone, you think about any device like a camera where you know, buttons get worn out. And so to do a good refurbishment process, you want to make those pieces really, really easy to replace. And then I think the other pieces that are really critical are usually batteries. So batteries have a fairly fixed life cycle. And so you want to make sure that you can replace batteries really easily. And then the last one that is really, I think, the most sensitive, thinking about a good refurbishment process and thinking about it for you guys too, is actually making sure that you wipe the data. So like anytime you guys send a phone back in, or any device or a camera, make sure the memory card's out, make sure that it's totally wiped. I would say that some refurbishment companies are really good at this, some are not. But if any refurbishment shop that I have been part of running or setting up, really the first thing at the very top of the line is making sure that as soon as a device comes in, that it is totally wiped clean, and that there is no way that anybody is ever going to be able to track it back to an individual or get individual data off of it. So does that answer your first question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Cool. So let's talk about Nike. So, and this is going to go, this is advice that is going to go for any cool brand that you want to work for, is you gotta show up where they are. You know, if you are at the absolute top of your class and you're brilliant, then this advice doesn't apply to you, and maybe you can just go get a job there. But for me, who's like middling talent, the way I've gone and gotten these jobs is I've gone and found like contracting positions. And so the way I got a job at Nike was I was living in Portland. I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to go work for Nike? And I went and I applied for a contract role as a project manager. I worked for 9 months there as a contract manager, as a contract project manager, and they liked what I did enough that they gave me a full-time offer. Getting a job at Nike through just applying to Nike is going to be a really tough road. So I don't know what the number is today. While I was working there, they got 20,000 applications a day. So it's like, it's pretty hard to stick out. And then I'll tell you the other thing is most of their internships are preset for Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and then for Big 12 schools that they have footwear endorsements with. So if you are not one of those things, I'm not going to say you're never going to get an internship there, but I would say that your odds are really low. But I can tell you that if you want to go, you know, Converse is still Boston based, and that's a Nike brand. You know, if you wanted to go next summer and go work as a contractor at Converse, there's a really high chance that you could go and swing that. Especially if you're coming out with a clear skill set. If you can say, you know .NET or Java or project management, if you have a clear contractable skill set, you'll be able to go and work there immediately. Cool. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. I see a nod.
On my screen, tell us something you learned today. Cam Barmolo, tell us something you learned, something that you didn't realize that you're taking away from Stefan's presentation.
I didn't realize that the glasses are like in the near future. I kind of remembered the Google glasses, and then it kind of like went absent, and I thought it was going to be like something they bring back in like 10 years from now. But hearing that like within the year with, I forget the company name, like Logistical or something.
Yeah, Luxottica.
Yeah, that there's like already works within a year. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that blew my mind too when I started working there. So yeah, cool call out.
Can you think of other products that were introduced where, like Google Glass, they introduced a product without necessarily having a problem that it was intended to solve?
You know, I think, oh man, I'm blanking on the name. They just went out of business. I think was it called Happy Leap or something Leap? There's another VR AR glass company that was like just had crazy hype that I think similarly just disappeared. And because it was a solution looking for a problem.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from those who are on the screen? Matt, your picture's up, so I'll call on you because I know you're standing there. so that you learned today that you thought was interesting?
Well, one of the biggest things that I took away was when you're talking about like the concept design and like kind of like how you guys put together with like Quest 2, and kind of like the marketing standpoint, like how to make it, like how much money like you go into making it. Like I'm kind of thinking about going to like entrepreneurship. So taking away, like those 5 things that you talked about, I wrote down like you said, the best tech, where to sell, how people will use it, like how much it will cost, who can make it. Like I took away a lot from that, so that was really helpful.
Awesome. Man, if you wanna get into entrepreneurship, you might have a lot of fun in the Bay.
Also, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you should come to this presentation 2 weeks from today. Jake O'Connell, who's a Bentley grad from 2 years ago, has worked in a couple of startups and is now starting his own company. And he hasn't even told me what it's about yet, but we're going to hear about that next in a couple weeks. So put that on your list. I should also ask Stefan, would you put your LinkedIn info in the chat so everybody who wants to follow you can follow you?
Yeah, happy to do that.
This way, if you're ever out in Portland and looking for somebody interesting to talk to, you can go visit the dog and visit Stefan or something. Let me take a minute and ask if there's any other questions for Stefan to tell you about the speakers we have coming up next week, and I hope you'll come back for those. If you are thinking about marketing as a major, you should come next week because we have a marketing major next week. His name is Matt Soma. Matt was actually one of the first tutors who worked in the CIS Sandbox 10 years ago. And he was a marketing major and a CIS minor. And he's now working for George B. Johnson, which is an experienced marketing company in the Boston area. And he's going to talk about how being a CIS minor will make you a better marketer. And then for the second half next week, we have Raheel Chowda, who was a graduate student at Bentley and is now working at Kayak. And he'll be talking about what software engineering is like at Kayak. So if you've ever bought an airplane ticket or rented a car through Kayak, you can ask him all about how that software works and what he's doing now as well. And then the week after that, as I just mentioned, Jake O'Connell will be back talking about startups and entrepreneurship, and he is an exceptional student, and I'm sure you'll enjoy hearing his presentation. The complete list, which is under development, is happening. I'll throw it into the chat so you can click on that link and see who's coming when. This series continues every Wednesday between now and just before Thanksgiving with other speakers from Google and Wayfair and Amazon and Uber, and maybe a few others lined up as well. So any last comments or questions for Stefan before we break?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Stefan, so have you watched Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary?
Yeah.
I wanted to know what were your thoughts about that documentary, you being in the industry, and if you agree with it or not, if you see it in your day-to-day work or no, and how is it?
Yeah, and so I think it's actually one that people have been talking about a lot, and I think that there's some really worthwhile perspectives that it brought. I think, namely, it's kind of crazy to think about. I think especially preteens and adolescents being exposed to endless YouTube and endless Instagram, and I think the potential of that being harmless. It is pretty disturbing to see. I think the correlation of this is a thing that people are becoming dependent on, and I think it raised some interesting ideas, and it certainly among my peers made an impression. I think here's the other piece that, again, this is me speaking for myself. Oh my. sorry, the dogs are seriously vying for attention today. Is that we have had a major revisit of ethics and norms every time there's a new technology introduced. And, you know, I think that learning curve is steep and it's scary. And you hope that people are acting ethically. And I can say that at least from the exposure and the interaction that I've had where I sit, and with people that work at Google, that this stuff is real to them. And, you know, I mean, I think one example is there is never any pressure, there is never any discussion to drive up duration of use. And it's, if it's anything, it's the opposite, that as you're observing Instagram, I think is one that has come early. There are little subtle checks in there that are trying to make you use the app less, so that it doesn't get to a point of overuse and obsession. But fundamentally, this question of if you have a platform with now 3 billion users across Facebook, Insta, and WhatsApp, right? That is probably the biggest footprint of any product in history. Right? There is no other thing that has ever existed that has had 3 billion people on it. And I think that everybody that I work with takes that as a genuine thing that they put into their day-to-day of how can I make the outcomes, how can I make the lives of these people better in ours? Because it's it's, you know, we all live in this world too. It's not like we're in an alternate reality. It's, you know, we're living in a place where the Cambridge Analytica scandal was real, and it's a shadow. So I hope you can appreciate that there are some parts of that question that I can't talk to you too much about what's going on inside. But I think that it is, I can say that it's definitely something that people took notice of and are being thoughtful about.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions before break? I also want to point out that Stefan's presentation and the ones from last week have been recorded, so you can visit those on the CIS Sandbox site at the link that I shared in the chat earlier. If that will end here, we'll keep the call on until the last person goes, in case somebody wants to check in with Stefan individually without a large crowd around. And I want to thank everybody for coming this week, and I hope you'll join us again next week at the same time, when we have Matt from George P. Johnson Marketing and Raheel Chowder from Kayak as our presenters in topics in tech. Thanks, everybody.